The last city council meeting had a little bit for everyone, from misdirection to bad advice, and we even had some pantomimes go along with that at the last meeting. It's time for some straight talk, McClendon and Chisholm. I'm Bunker Bob, and this is the Bunker Bob Show. Yes, and it is great to be back with you again after a long hiatus. I actually had a bit of an issue. My father, my 88-year-old father, took a fall, and I went to Canyon Lake where he lives to take care of him for a little while and get him back up and running, and he's doing great now. So praise the Lord for that. And the idea is he wants to live alone and live freely, and boy, I'm going to do everything I can to help him do that because he sure has meant the world to me. So sorry for the long hiatus, but I'm glad to be back, and I hope that you're glad to have me back as well. I'm talking on this show. I'm going to be highlighting the February 25th meeting, and I'll be highlighting the last Tuesday's meeting. And I'll be able to do that in one show, and there's a very good reason for that, which I'll talk about toward the end of the show. But I want to basically begin with let's go back to the Strip Center. Those of you who are either on the Planning and Zoning Commission or haven't watched this show in some time, well, you may not be aware that the City Council is considering giving $200,000 of taxpayer funds to a developer. Oh, wait a minute. The city administrator says it's not giving money to a developer. The fact is, we're basically making it possible for a strip center to go in by giving by investing, is what they're saying, $200,000 to help cultivate and to motivate economic development in the city. By helping to put in a sewer line that'll be a city-owned sewer line. And the problem is, if the city didn't do it, if taxpayers didn't do it, well, the developer would. And I talked about, if you haven't watched the last couple of shows, then you have no idea the kind of developer that we're talking about, the reputation, the disreputable developer that we're dealing with, and I have no idea on earth why the city of McClendon Chisholm would even consider investing with this developer, much less the fact that as a conservative, I oppose this welfare to developers, and I just think it's a bad precedent to set any way you look at it. So that is ultimately why I'm opposed to. But the process of moving forward here is underway. And so one of the steps that this developer has to take is they're going through planning and zoning, and so what the first step was, they went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I went through that entire meeting. I've got the video, and I'll be showing some highlights from that meeting so that you can see for yourself what went on. The basic point of that Planning and Zoning meeting was to try and get a variance to allow a larger more businesses. I think they're restricted on the size in that strip center on how big each business can be, and so that what they want is be able to have a larger businesses in that strip center and not be constrained. So it's basically that kind of an ordinance, but that's kind of interesting because the Planning and Zoning Commission did reject it. I'm glad they did, frankly. I don't take issue with the Planning and Zoning Commission on the fact that they rejected it. The problem is it was kind of a little bit of Keystone Cops because, again, I'm going to argue that not all, I'm not suggesting that every member of planning and zoning is not doing their homework, is not reading, and is not investigating. But I will say, what I can say is that most of the Planning and Zoning Commission had never watched my show. Because if they had, what's interesting is you know more than the Planning and Zoning Commission knew. And I can prove that. So let me start by highlighting one of the things that the architect for this developer came, and he has some new slides. And in fact, these slides this rendering of the strip center looks completely different from what they had presented to City Council in the previous two meetings. And so. What's interesting is he basically said that he just finished these drawings, I think either that day or the day before. So here is his presentation. It'll show you what I've done is I've added all of the image files to this so that as he's talking, instead of just sitting and looking at this panel that's doing nothing, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you actually have something to look at. So here's his presentation.
We had just finished these drawings, what you see here, yesterday, and as an architect, when the owner tells me, "Hey, Dave, what can you do at this site?" Well, certainly I'm going to have to calculate how much ratio of building area to parking lots can we do, how can we maximize, and this is what we came up with, subject to and I think the last time we were here, there was confusion as to what's it going to look like. I'm concerned, we just don't want a typical strip center on here. So, we kind of went back to concentrating in the old town look. Once we get to the nuts and bolts, with building permitting, like I said, building permitting, our civil engineers, working with the city, it's going to change. But our image, our character of the building is what we basically see here. And that's all we want to show is the character of the building and the way the parking lot is going to work and what we can do with the buildings. Yeah,
so the renderings, look very nice. They're very different in what we saw before. Obviously, a better match with our city. But there are strings tied to that. And ultimately, what the city administrator is saying is that if we don't contribute the $200,000, we're not going to get a strip center that looks like that. And I think the Planning and Zoning Commission is making some good decisions by saying, well, wait a minute, there's nothing in writing here. This is all kind of conjecture and speculations. In fact, the architect himself said these things don't going to end up looking like they do right now. And so when on the 28th, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission went before the city council. Here is basically his presentation and what he had to say.
During the discussion and during the open meeting and the presentation, the commissioners raised those questions and concerns, and that's when we got the comments from applicant and staff that it's our intention and it's also up for debate. And those were some things that we had some difficulty with, not knowing what those intentions were. And like I said, the plat that we received, or the conceptual plan that we received, was totally different than what you're looking at there, as well as any of the other artwork was not included in their presentation.
And so ultimately, even though the artwork that they received as a Planning and Zoning Commission wasn't there, ultimately the same issues and the bottom line is whether or not they would allow the zoning change as requested. So this is what the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, this is what he says it was the reason they rejected it. Now, Chairman Rody is how you pronounce his name. I never knew that. Actually, I've heard his name, or I've seen his name many times, even when I was mayor. I always thought it was Rode, so it's Rody. He pronounced it. But here's what he says about their decision to reject the zoning change.
Some information was not definitive enough. It lacked structure. So rather than proceed and recommend to City Council for approval, the Commission chose the side of caution, knowing that the applicant could resubmit the request with information directly related to that land use change, or that it would come before Council and a clearer discussion that ensures the validity of that land use change request would occur. So that is kind of the background of our decision.
Yeah, that sounds good, and I don't. I'm not saying that's not a good reason to have rejected it. The problem is, if you watch the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, that is not why they rejected it. There was nothing of that in the discussion. I never heard him say any of these words. In fact, what actually happened is quite telling. So this is actually what they said and what happened at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I need another motion. Pardon? You left it open. You didn't. He had made a motion for approval, so there needs to be a motion for some other action. Denial, hold it under advisement, something. You can't leave it open. Just there was a motion for approval and it didn't, but that doesn't mean there's still no ending to it. There's no vote.
So
I motion to deny. I motion to deny the request.
I second.
the motion has been made and seconded to deny the request for changing the general business zone change from general business to planned development district. All those in favor of denying the zone change, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the zone change, say aye. Aye.
Yeah, so they did what happened is someone made a motion to approve, and no one seconded the motion. So the motion died for lack of a second. Of course, they didn't say it that way. So basically, they wanted to move on, and the city planner was basically saying we need some kind of motion. You see, in any of the discussion, when the motion was made, and in Robert's rules, you make a motion, then you have discussion. You see there's no discussion about the reason why they're refusing to approve it. But I think what's most, I guess what's a little most confusing to me is when I see or when I hear the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission talk about what wasn't included or what wasn't discussed in the meeting, and it really kind of begs the question of which meeting he was attending. And so this is one of the issues. I think the key issue apparently was the fact that no restaurant was ever discussed, and so this is what he says.
But it seems to me, though, that going from the general business to the planned development, the big change is the restaurant, putting in the restaurant. And so was that not described to you?
No.
It's pretty definitive. No. Restaurant was not described in the presentation. However, this is important. And by the way, I'm coming to the defense of the city council, members of city council. They should actually be glad that I'm doing this show, because I'm helping them out a little bit, showing that the council is making good decisions based upon the recommendations of the planning and zoning. Even though the city council has done none of their own homework, they were asking incredibly ignorant questions, and they were asking questions in the previous two meetings where they did meet with this developer. They had not investigated anything. I find it interesting that that over the last couple of meetings, we've seen citizens stand up and talk, and obviously there are people who are watching this show, which I love. That's great. And then you have people like former Mayor Mike Donegan, who babbles on about things that just it's a little bit embarrassing. But bottom line, there are some good questions and some good points made. This is just a little bit of what I mean by that. Here's Wozner and Slick Willie.
What your discussion and action on is just the zoning change in general business and planning development.
But I don't think planning and zoning had the information we are getting now. And that's why they are denying it, because they didn't have all of the information.
I understand.
And I rely on them.
I understand that.
So I'm not trying to say yes or no. I'm just trying to say.
My concern is the fact that first time we heard about this project, we were told, this council was told about the restaurant, and P&Z did not get that information. I would like all bodies to be able to have the same information so that everybody can make the same decision at the same time.
Yeah. So again, they're basing their decision and their how they're moving forward based upon the idea that the Planning and Zoning Commission never discussed the restaurant, the idea of a restaurant. Well, here's what really happened. Watch for yourself.
It's too early, it's not, but we trying to bring sitting restaurants and services like a dry cleaning, nails, hair, doctors, dentals, any physicians, yes.
The existing zoning would allow a restaurant, obviously, and really, and the only change in uses are prohibiting uses between this proposal and Brookshire's. The only real change would be the size of a building in that sense and the length of a wall. But the existing commercial development standards would allow a restaurant use there today, and they could build that. It would require maybe an SUP to do that for the drive-through part, I think. The sewer is based on if he's got a restaurant, he's got to have a grease trap and all those other things, and it's got to get city engineers going to review that and everything. If the restaurant were too big, it wouldn't work. Just you've got sewer issues and water issues and things of that nature. So.
And just to clarify, you said a restaurant is not able to be built on that land? Based on Brookshire's?
Well, I think Brookshire's did not prohibit a restaurant. We require an SUP for it, which is one other layer, special use permit. They'd come in, it's another sort of zoning layer they'd go through, and you look at that with the site plan and say, okay, that restaurant with that site plan and that condition is good or not. Okay. Yeah, this would allow it by right.
You mentioned restaurant potential. Now we're talking a restaurant. We have grease. How does that flow?
Yeah, so no restaurant was discussed. Yes, I don't know where Mr. Rohde was during the meeting, but clearly there was a restaurant being discussed, and then I think rightly so. And to defend her, the city administrator made the following point.
Mayor, may I interject?
Yes,
Although these rendering drawings were not in the P&Z packet, the staff report did show a restaurant and gave the square footage, the maximum square footage. So the details were in there, but you would have to read through that staff report. There just weren't pictures.
Yeah. So what is my point by highlighting these things? Ultimately, my point is that from the very beginning, the city of McClendon-Chisholm, since I've left office, has taken absolutely no action to put together a long-term comprehensive city plan that moves and molds itself to the will of the people. Now we've had 4 city surveys, and those surveys make very clear what the people of McClendon-Chisholm want. And so the city council is now considering giving $200,000 to this developer. Oh, I'm sorry, not giving, if you want to split hairs, but they are giving $200,000 in corporate welfare of your tax dollars to a developer to help bring this strip center in. And I think it's amazing that they raised our taxes from an effective 12 cents to 15 cents. But now they're so flush with cash, they can afford to give $200,000 to a developer, where the return on that investment is tenuous at best, and there's no true plan. The city council, the city council put together a planning or a group of people. For the most part, you got the Mark Kippets and Mike Donegans on this thing. And what do you expect? What do you expect to have happen? Absolutely nothing. They've been together for over a year now, and what has been accomplished? Nothing. Now you have a planning and zoning commission that clearly is not even reading their agenda packet. This is a very simple thing. When I was mayor, when I was on city council, when I was a member of city council, I proposed getting rid of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And why? Because there are so few things that go before planning and zoning, and the city council has a right to do that. They can act as the Planning and Zoning Commission. But the reason why is because of things like this. We have a very small population, and the people who are on planning and zoning don't understand really what they're doing on that committee. They're not well trained. They have no understanding of the background of things. And I think as elected officials, the city council has an obligation to investigate and to take action as a planning and zoning commission of its own. Now, some people say, well, that's Steinhagen trying to be power hungry, putting all of that power in the hands of the city council. But in fact, what I'm trying to do is ensure that those who are held accountable are actually going to follow through with what they're doing. Now, all that said, great philosophical idea. I get it. Because the reality is that this city council, our current city council, they don't read what their agenda packets. It's clear. As I've talked about and highlighted again and again and again, they're not taking time to really understand what is coming before them. You know who the most informed people in the city are? The people who watch this show. Thanks to Adrian Balcom, the Iron Lady. Thanks to Scott Turnbull, the Doctor of Finance, who helped me prepare for these shows, who give me information. Thanks to citizens who email me and provide me with additional information. The citizens who watch the show are very well informed. Unfortunately, we have a planning and zoning commission who's clearly not, and who's providing misinformation to the city council. And what Wozner said was that they depend on what the planning and zoning commission recommends. That's what they depend on. Nathan Hodges made the motion to send it back, and because they wanted to depend on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Ultimately, the idea of planning and zoning is supposed to be that's the first step. Then it goes to the city council, and the city council is supposed to be taking a hard look at it, but they're not. They won't. They're basically going to rubber stamp whatever the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to do, and therein lies the problem. Therein lies my rub, and it should frighten everybody. So that's the problem with what's happening with this city. There's no plan. There's no vision for what the business what business and commerce looks like in McLennan Chisholm. Of course, Jim Bloom is the one who spearheaded that. Jim and I disagree on his what he believes is the panacea to our tax quote unquote problem, to keep taxes low. As I keep saying, the more businesses that come in, guess what? The more taxes that are going to be levied. Not on the businesses. No. You and me, we're going to be Our taxes are going to go up. The more businesses, the bigger government, and I'm going to be talking about bigger government in just a second. So that's basically the long and short of that. I want to go to the next thing that was on the agenda, and that is the prohibition on or restrictions on fireworks. And this is Nathan Hodges making this appeal.
Obviously, this has been a hot topic for years and years. And, I wanted to see what and the reason I bring it up is I've had a couple of citizens raise some concerns about shooting fireworks and when they were being shot, and, is this something that we as a council want to start to look at addressing in some way?
Yeah. So if I were Nathan Hodges, if I were Lorna Kippett, if I were William Dahl, I would leave it at that and say, okay, they want to stop. They want to end our fireworks because misinformation, half truths are kind of what they trade in, if you will. But I'm not going to tell you half a truth. I'm going to tell you the whole truth. Nathan Hodges is actually not for a fireworks ban. That's not what he's proposing. What he's saying is that there are high density developments, i.e. Sonoma Verde. And in that high density development, it is crazy to think that people are shooting off fireworks in that development. Now, I believe that the HOA has restrictions on it. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But if the HOA has restrictions on it, then we shouldn't be even considering this. And by the way, I love the fact that we can shoot off fireworks. I really do, but I don't shoot off fireworks. I have a dog that just goes crazy when fireworks go off, and I have to watch him whenever the 4th of July or New Year's comes along, or when Slick Willie shoots off his Diwali celebration. Of course, he's not Hindu, but he has a Diwali celebration. Go explain that to me. So I'm basically the point that I'm making is a law forbidding fireworks will not end fireworks. People will continue to shoot off fireworks, guaranteed. How do I know that? Because I'm from Houston, Texas, in one of the most populated areas of the Houston area is where I grew up, the Galleria area, and I can tell you that every 4th of July, every New Year's, we had idiots in our neighborhood shooting off fireworks. And guess what? The police would come, and what would happen? They have to see them in the act. It will not change anything. The issue is, what I think Councilmember, illegitimately appointed Councilmember Hodges is trying to point out is, there are people who act irresponsibly. Guess what? Laws don't stop people from acting irresponsibly. So, how are you going to stop people from acting irresponsible? You don't. Hopefully, they will weed themselves out of the population. They will blow their hand off. Because if they're stupid enough to shoot a firework off in Sonoma Verde, well, then they're stupid enough to blow their hand off. So a law will not help us with that. But you know what it will do? It will require a growth in government. Why? Because you have to police it. How do you police it? You're going to get the sheriff to come out there. Well, it's going to increase the number of calls to the sheriff's department. They're going to demand that we have a dedicated officer in our city, which I think is fine. But that's not what's going to happen, because you've got Keith Short as our mayor, and big government Keith is going to want to have a police department for the city of McLennan Chisholm. One of the dumbest things that our city could ever do, but they have been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. Jim Simmons, our fire chief, he's also a peace officer. He is dying for our city to have a police department. You know, the only good thing that our city, not good, the only thing that will come from having a city-owned police department is, guess what? We will become the speed trap capital of Texas. Because the only way for it to bring in any kind of revenue is to get speeders. And guess what, folks? You're going to get caught. You guarantee you, you'll get caught one of these days by our designated police officer. So this is, again, a slippery slope. I urge the council to not to please stay away from this ordinance. Jim Simmons, the fire chief, is going to be making some recommendations to the council specifically for Sonoma Verde, I believe, or high density developments. I'm guessing for developments that are less than an acre or half an acre or less. I guess that makes sense. I just think you can't fix stupid. And people who shoot off fireworks in these high density areas are going to continue to do it. And there's not a darn thing that a law or ordinance is ever going to do to stop it. All right, so get off my soapbox on that. I now want to go to a presentation that was made by our county commissioner, our career politician, Dennis Bailey, council member, who is running for re-election. And I have invited both Dennis Bailey and Ms. Barker to come on the show. Neither one of them have taken me up on that, and that's unfortunate. But I'm going to do a show specifically on the county commissioner race. I'm either going to do that tomorrow or Sunday. If I can. If not, it'll be on Monday. But I'm going to highlight some problems that I have specific to Commissioner Bailey and why I think Commissioner Bailey does not serve our city well at all. He is a product of Heath, and he is a big growth, big government kind of Republican. Of course, you got to understand, if you're going to run for office in the city in Rockwall County, that voted, 87% Donald Trump, you're going to be a Republican whether or not you believe in the values of the Republican Party or not. So you got to be a Republican. Everybody's a Republican. So to be a Republican in Rockwall County is honestly meaningless. It means nothing. If Mark Kippett, a man who has opposed our tax rollback, who encouraged our city council to raise our tax rate from an effective 12 cents to 16 cents, and of course the city council just raised it to 15 cents. I mean, this is the guy who calls himself a Republican and a conservative. Gosh, I mean, this is the problem that I have. So this is an important thing that Mr. Bailey is bringing to the city, and I hope that you hang in with me, because I'm going to share with you some background on some stuff that if you don't understand what is happening here, you're going to miss a lot. And unfortunately, our city council really is completely oblivious to the facts that I'm going to present now. So Commissioner Bailey comes before our city council to talk about subdivision regulation. And here's kind of what he has to say.
My request to be here this evening was to inform the council of a complete rewrite that Rockwall County is going through with its subdivision regulations. Municipalities have ordinances that govern your development of subdivisions. Counties have regulations, and they are quite different, and much more stringent if you work with a city's ordinance than if you are looking at what a county can enforce and do that. You have accepted the responsibility of any developments that are petitioned for within your ETJ areas, that you would take the lead in seeing that you research both your ordinances and our regulations, and then whichever our agreement is, whichever is the more stringent of the two is what you would enforce.
So it sounds like maybe when the interlocal was done, probably a while back is what I'm guessing. Right?
This is the city attorney speaking.
Like it was perfectly valid and legal then, but portions of it probably are not consistent now with state law. And that may be
in council, that's what we're going to address.
Okay, good. That was going to be my next thing. I think that's maybe what he's saying. So, yeah, expect that, I would assume, to come back at a later date.
Part that clip did not get edited correctly. So what was interesting is the attorney obviously cut the wrong piece, but where the attorney was speaking, what he was saying was what Dennis Bailey said is not true, that you don't pick if the cities is more restrictive or the counties is more restricted, which one is more restrictive, that's the one that you go with. That's the attorney said that's not true. No, you actually have to, the city and the county are by statute required to get together and make a decision on which statute you're going to follow. And if you can't come to an agreement, you basically have to fight it out, because ultimately it has to, you have to come to a resolution. And that's important because of the fact that the whatever happens in ETJs, and they're talking about ETJs, the extraterritorial jurisdiction. Well, this was a big issue, big issue for Keith Short, our current mayor, who said, who basically used one thing that I did and the city council did when I was mayor. And he really, because of his ignorance on the issue, made it an issue as though we did something wrong. Now, here's Dennis Bailey talking about that issue.
Not long ago, a previous council here in McClendon had worked out an agreement with the city of Rockwall to take over some of the ETJ areas that were under your responsibility. So I want to tell you that I think some of you are already aware of this, that D.R. Horton picked up a contract that had been through your city several years ago that had all the approval from TCEQ to develop about 1,200 acres that were in that particular area. That land swap of ETJs then went over to City of Rockwall.
Now, what's important about this is, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring up, this is the city map, or it was the old city boundaries, and I'm going to highlight what Mr. Bailey is talking about with the 4,000 acres. The 4,000 acres are all in this green, and it extends right to this. There's a line here, and let me come in a little bit closer in so you can kind of get a better sense. Let's see. Get over here. There it is. Okay, so you see right here, this is that portion over there. That's the ETJ, and that's what we're talking about. That's the 4,000 acres that we were giving away, or that we gave away, that we gave to the city of Rockwall. And so, if you look, the first thing that you should understand about this whole thing is an extraterritorial jurisdiction extends for a general law type A city like McClendon-Chisholm, which is what McClendon-Chisholm is. All of the other surrounding cities, they're home rule. But because of our population, we're governed by state law. We don't have our own rules and laws necessarily. We're governed by the state. Until we get to the size of 5,000 in population, we can't even consider being home rule. And I pray and hope and pray that we never become home rule, because home rule is nothing more than big government. It shocks me that how many people actually think that home rule is actually a good thing. The problem is, or the issue is, that if you look around the city, our ETJ extends by law, by statute, it extends for a general law city half a mile out from its border. For a home rule city, depending on population, I mean, it's like 2.5 miles, and it can be 5 miles. It just depends on the size of the city. But for our city, it's 2.5. It's half a mile. Now, the first question you should ask yourself is this: How did that get into our ETJ? How is that even possible? Well, it's real simple. There are 3 property owners here. There's a property owner here. This portion is owned by Hinckley. They're a developer that I'll talk about in a little bit. This one is owned by Koch, and this is owned by the Zeitling Group. Now, these two are they're from Arizona. They're from out of state, and so this middle part is what Dennis Bailey is talking about, is referring to, where they basically have met with TCEQ. What does that mean? Well, before I was mayor, before I was on city council, this whole thing got put into our ETJ. Why? Because these landowners, these developers, were making a deal with your favorite mayors and city councils, because they basically were going to come into the city. So the first step to come into the city, you got to be in the ETJ. So that's the first step. Second step is to come into the city. And so when it came time to come into the city, guess what these developers said? No, thanks. We'll just stay here. Why did they want to be in McLennan Chisholm's ETJ to begin with? Well, because they were bordering Rockwall. Rockwall has the ability to involuntarily annex this portion of the ETJ. If they were in their ETJ, because Rockwall was growing to such a point and they could kind of see what was happening, they wanted to be free from regulation. And they knew that a general law type A city had no ability to control what happened in the ETJ. So they basically set that up, set the idiots at our city, in our city government up, and basically played them. So this middle section, which is owned by Coke now, they decided that they wanted to put in a water district. Now here's a little information you've got to understand, that a city must be able to provide water to deny a landowner or developer from developing it. Okay. So if you want to have any control, you first have to have the ability to have water. Well, the city of McLennan Chisholm doesn't have that ability. Rockwall does. They provide water to their city. They have a water department. And so because of that, because we gave this portion to City of Rockwall, well, they cannot create their own water district, except while they were still under, while this section and all of this section was still under in McLennan Chisholm, they basically said they wanted to create a water district, which is a precursor to a mud district, a municipal utility district, the bane of every city's existence. Don't believe me? Ask any mayor, ask any city councilman anywhere. Ask them the simple question: is a mud district good or bad? And they will tell you that is terrible. It's terrible for the cities that border them. It is terrible for the people who live inside them. They are terrible, terrible, terrible. So what happened is Gary Moody, the mayor of McLennan Chisholm, and the city council decided, well, we're going to try to negotiate. Let's negotiate with them. We spent tens of thousands of dollars in attorney fees negotiating with this property owner. And Gary Moody and Steve Hatfield and Jack Pullen, these guys, they will tell you things that everything is so great. Mike Donegan, former mayor Mike Donegan, another one. We got to work with these people. We've got to work with these people. And so when they worked with these people, they spent over, I think it was 8 months negotiating with them. And you know what? In the end, the landowner goes, you know what? Forget it. We're not going to negotiate. We don't need to negotiate it. We don't have to negotiate with you. So you can go pound sand, which is exactly what they did. So when I was on city council and mayor and Nathan Hodges was mayor, we got a request for this piece of property and this piece of property to become a water district. They wanted to become a water district too. What they were about to do was put in a mud district. Here's their essential problem. This little guy right here, this portion, that's about 1,500 acres, as Bailey is talking about. That portion of property is not enough. And the density that they're talking about, 3,000 homes on 1,500 acres, it's not really profitable enough to create a water district, because you have to create sewer, you have to do a lot of things. And with the new Texas regulations, they have now required that if you're going to put in a mud district, you also have to have fire and police. You have to provide fire and police, unless you can negotiate with surrounding cities. Okay, so it's not profitable for them to do that on their own. So what they do, they talked to the Zeitling group and they talked to the Hinckleys, and they all got together. They had the same attorney that walked into our city council meeting with Gary Moody. And that attorney and Gary Moody, former Mayor Gary Moody, they sat together. And Gary Moody stood up at the city council meeting and said, "You can work with this attorney." And we're all kind of sitting there going, "What do you mean work with an attorney? You can work with any attorney. The attorney is not the person we need to be talking to. It's the landowners. That's who we need to be talking to." And so that's exactly what I requested, to meet with the landowners. And when we met with the landowners, the Zeitling group, Koch, and the Hinckleys, the Zeitlings came in and flew in from Arizona. Hinckleys, they live in Highland Park. They came in and we had a conference call with Koch. Understand, Koch, we couldn't do anything about that. That's a done deal. That horse has left the barn. City of Rockwall cannot control what this Koch and it's now D.R. Horton is trying to develop in there. They cannot do anything. They cannot stop them, even though they can provide water. It's because they've already made that appeal to our city. That is no longer an option for Rockwall, but Rockwall can control these two. So what they were trying to do, this is before we handed this over to Rockwall, what we were trying to do is negotiate, okay, well, if you guys want to do this, I came up with the idea, or let me put it this way. We had a meeting with a land attorney. Nathan Hodges, this was at his last meeting as mayor, because he resigned. He said he didn't have the time to do it, but apparently he has time to be a member of city council. The reason he resigned is because I caught him violating the Texas Open Meetings Act, and I was threatening to file suit against him. And so he resigned. But the night that he resigned, we met with the land attorney, and basically what they said was, our city had no ability to control what these guys did. If they want to work together, they can. And if they want to put in a mud district, they can. We cannot stop them. And so it was that next meeting I came up with the idea. What if we just gave that ETJ to the city of Rockwall, because they actually have the ability to involuntarily annex, and they can control, because they can provide water. They can control what goes in here. We know that if the city of Rockwall, at the very least, if the city of Rockwall says we can provide water to these two, and not this one, this center piece right here of the puzzle, there's no way that they're going to create a mud district. They can't. It's not profitable for them to do so. And so that's the rub. And so basically we sat them down, and I even said to the owners, to the Hinckleys, to the Zeitlings, and to the Koch, I think it was attorneys that we were talking to. But I was basically saying, look, if you'll compromise, we'll compromise. If you'll come into our city and you will agree to a maximum or a minimum 1 acre per home site. I said, I can go to the citizens of McLennan Chisholm and ask them and appeal to them and say, here's the deal. I'd be willing to do that. I'd be willing to spend some political capital doing that and telling them, hey, this is a great deal for all of us. You got to also understand, and this is another thing that you probably, a lot of you who are watching don't understand. So Sonoma Verde is right here, right across from Sonoma Verde. When we got this request, it was the Zeitlings that were putting in an apartment complex right here, a multifamily. That's what they wanted to put in. And that's right across from Edwards Road. This is Edwards Road. There's 205 right there. Okay, give you your bearing. There's 550. What they were going to do is put in an apartment complex. And so basically their only ability to get to 550 was through League Road. So those of you who are frustrated about traffic and stuff, guess what would have happened? If we had not given this portion of our ETJ to the city of Rockwall, guess what would be happening right now as we speak? There would be apartment complexes going up. The Hinckleys want to put townhomes. The Hinckleys own the top portion. They want to put in townhomes. Multifamily. The key to development, the key to making money in development is density, density, density. And so that's what we were trying to prevent. So I hope that helps you understand why we did what we did. Now let's listen to Dennis Bailey. And now he's going to talk about the D.R. Horton's mud district and why the city of Rockwall is not working with them. Remember, that's the center property.
D.R. Horton came to me and asked me to take a look at the development plans that they had. Their initial proposal was about 3,000 homes on that 1,200 acres that they wanted to ask us for approval for. So I quickly told them, hey, we have an interlocal agreement with the city of Rockwall, so you must go to Rockwall and work with them. They commented at the time that they had been to Rockwall and that they were trying to work out some issues about law enforcement and fire that they would have to have in that particular development. And at the point of time that they were talking to Rockwall, I think Rockwall had said, hey, we don't have much interest in providing those services to you.
Yeah, so like him or not, Jim Pruitt, the mayor of Rockwall, I have always found him to be one of the most conservative guys that I've ever worked with. He's also one of the straightest shooters I've ever worked with. Here's the thing. Okay, so this is the center section. D.R. Horton wants to put a mud district in. To put a mud district in, what do they have to have? Fire and police. They also have to provide their own water, right? So for them to do this, okay, they need help. And so they're going to the city of Rockwall and going, hey, would you guys provide police and fire? And guess what Jim Pruitt's saying? You can go pound sand. No, we're not going to provide police and fire. And that's important because Jim Pruitt is living up to his agreement with me and our city council and the Rockwall City Council. They're living up to their agreement. They want to stop a mud district as much as we do. They're not going to work with them. But here's the thing. Dennis Bailey is trying to change the subdivision regulations. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to loosen them for this kind of development. Dennis Bailey. They're working on this development, and Rockwall's having none of it. So it shouldn't be any surprise that about what you're going to hear. Remember, this is the D.R. Horton area. This is the Hinckley property up here. Okay, so they're side by side. Now listen to this.
In the unincorporated, we don't do water. We don't have access.
He's talking about the county. He doesn't do water.
So we're subject to those particular areas coming. And with the recent changes in legislation in this last 86th session, that kind of ties your hands as far as being able to annex property out there. Individuals that are out there must, as I understand it, petition you to come out and to take them in. So, there's I think a renewed look, and we're beginning to see in a lot of the unincorporated areas a lot of development that's beginning to start up. And we know that has been coming. This particular 1,200 acres is contiguous with Mr. Hinckley, who's been, I think, before you in several times before, has about 2,000 acres there. I spoke with him the other day. I think that there could be an opportunity that the two of them, D.R. Horton and Mr. Hinckley, may work out some kind of deal where a package plant or whatever, usage of the septic system might go on Glenn's property over there. They're working together on that.
So that they can put in a mud district. They want to put in a mud district. The problem is the Hinkleys are going to have a little problem with the city of Rockwall. You see, the city of McLean-Chisholm cannot involuntarily annex any part of its ETJ, any of it. City Rockwall can. They still can. It is my understanding they can still involuntarily annex pieces of property. which is exactly what the city of Rockwell will be doing if the Hinckleys try to move forward with this. What is this going to do? Will that stop high density? No, it won't stop high density. It will stop apartment complexes. The city of Rockwell has already said, in our comprehensive plan, we have all of the apartments that we need, that our comprehensive plan says. We are getting rid of these these apartment complexes, the very high end or high density developments, which is good for our city. If we had not given that 4,000 acres away, despite Keith Short says we gave our city's future away. That's because Keith Short loves high density. He doesn't care about our wide open spaces. He wants density, density, density. He wants money, money, money. He likes government, government, government. Otherwise, why would he say that? Why would he say that we gave away our city's future? A mud district there's no taxes going in, but you know what? Crime comes in. High density, what happens with high density? The higher the density, the more crime, right? The more fire problem there are. Whatever these guys do, they're going to have to put in their own water. They're going to have to put in fire and police, and it's just not cost effective. So this is County Commissioner Dennis Bailey has a little bit of advice for our city. The question is, should we be listening to Dennis Bailey?
As a side note, I'd like to just, if I may, kind of give you a little bit of my opinion. This is not county, but PIDs and MUDs come about within municipalities or within unincorporated areas or ETJs as a result of the community not being able to provide water. That is the thing that I would encourage the city to take a look at, is to position yourself to be able to get into the water business. And I think that would give you a lot more leverage, certainly within your community. And if for some reason there's certainly other areas of ETJ that you have, that you would be able to, I think, more effectively work with subdivisions that are in those particular areas.
Yeah, so there's two problems with what Mr. Bailey is saying. The first one is there's other areas of our ETJ that being in the water business will affect. Really, which ones? Where is a massive development going to go in? Anywhere. It's not cost effective. We have half a mile of ETJ, and for these things to work out, I've talked to developers. They're the ones who tell me this. For it to work out, you got to have 3,000 acres for a mud district to be profitable, especially if you can't just put in like massive apartment complexes, massive, then it doesn't make any sense to try and put a water district into less area than that. And so that's the first thing. But the second problem with what he says is we've already tried. This is Chris Coomey. Listen to him.
Put the city in the water business to basically develop a water system so that you could be in your own destiny and create your own development rules, your own land use plans, because when you have utilities that you can offer developers, you're really in the catbird seat as to what kind of development, what kind of communities you want. Unfortunately, we were looking to do a water line that was going to go all the way to Terrell. We hit a snag with the North Texas Municipal Water District in the city of Terrell, so we had to backtrack. So RCH actually provides the water, but we were able to work out an agreement with the city and RCH that the city actually owns the water lines that are in Sonoma Verde.
So the fact is, we have made attempts to try and bring water to the city of McClendon Chisholm. And the problem is we can't do it. So Dennis Bailey is providing bad advice after bad advice after bad advice. He's given us a legal opinion that is wrong, that the city attorney has said no, that's not true. He's telling us that we should get in the water business because it'll help. It'll affect our ETJ. It won't, and that we should be able to get into it, and we can't. So this is why We have a county commissioner that is giving the city some terrible advice, in my opinion. And so that's just the precursor. When you look at the breadth of Dennis Bailey's actions as a member of the county commission, it is incumbent upon every member of the city of McLennan Chisholm. I'm not talking about the Donegans and the Kippets. Listen, they are in bed with Dennis Bailey. And I will tell you this, they'll tell you whatever you want to hear. If you don't like Dennis Bailey, they won't like Dennis Bailey either. Oh yeah, I don't like him either. Yeah, well, you'll be surprised who I'm voting for. Jenny Barker. Yeah, I'll vote for her. Jenny Barker happens to be a citizen of McLennan Chisholm. I didn't know Jenny before this, and no, I didn't recruit her to run. I'm so glad I'm so glad that someone has decided to challenge Dennis Bailey. And I think and when you learn more about Jenny Barker, I think you're going to be blown away by what we have an opportunity to bring to the county, especially the fact that she lives in McLennan Chisholm. Hey, great thing about that. She might actually know some things about what's really going on and what is true and what is not. So I'm going to talk more about Commissioner Bailey. And if Commissioner Bailey takes exception with anything I have to say, he's more than welcome to call me. He's more than welcome to come on my show. Jenny Barker is more than welcome to come on my show. The invitation's out there. I've actually gave an invitation to Dennis Bailey personally. The night that the filing deadline came, I went to Republican Party headquarters to see who was running against who. And Dennis Bailey sidled up to me and said, well, I hope I can have your support. I said, well, I'll have to think about that. He had the audacity to ask for my support, but hey, and you'll understand why I say audacity, because he screwed the citizens of McLennan Chisholm royally, and I have not forgotten all of the things that Dennis Bailey has done against the citizens of McLennan Chisholm and against the taxpayers of Rockwall County. And I will be highlighting those on this next show. Now, finally, I have one thing I want to talk about, and that is this last Tuesday's City Council meeting. Last Tuesday's City Council meeting, you've got to understand, our city purchased $6,000 worth of camera equipment so that they could broadcast the City Council meetings. They have what's called a point tilt zoom camera. It's a $3,000 camera. And this camera basically is called a point tilt zoom, PTZ. It points, it tilts, and it zooms. It can move. And it can be programmed with a little computer. In fact, I even told the city, I told Lisa Palomba, hey, if the mayor's okay with it, which I knew he wouldn't be. He doesn't want anyone from any conservative touching anything. I told her I would set it up for her program it so that she could, so that the camera, instead of you just sitting there watching the council go like this, pick their noses, and you could actually, the camera would actually move and you could see who's speaking. Wouldn't that be novel? We spent $6,000 for a system to do that. And guess what? We've never used it like that. It just sits there on the desk. Of course, when I was mayor, we broadcast live all the time to YouTube Live, right? You saw it. Most of you did. And you know how much it cost citizens? Zero. It cost us nothing. Was it because I was using my equipment? No. It was because I utilized what the city already had. In fact, the system that the city uses is the same city, the system that the city has in its possession is the same system I use for my show. With all of that money, and remember, every member of the city council, even the illegitimately appointed council member, Nathan Hodges, say they're fiscal conservatives. Ask yourself this: how fiscally conservative must you be to spend $6,000 on AV equipment that you don't even use? You know what happened in the last city council meeting? We have a redundant system. What was installed, by the way, when they built the $2.125 million, 5,000 square foot city hall building, the boondoggle that it is, they spent tens of thousands of dollars on AV equipment. They've got a rack, and in that rack is an audio recorder. You know what it does? You press the button, and it records all the audio from all the microphones. And when you do that, it basically doesn't record on one disc, it records on two. It's a redundant system to make sure that if one goes out, You still have the recording. So they now have the redundant audio recorder, right? And they got the $6,000 system. Get online and go watch the last city council meeting. And you'll understand why I say it's a mime show, because you can't hear anyone. I asked for the audio file. I said the audio didn't record on the video. Can I please get the audio file? And they said the audio file didn't record that either. This is your tax dollars. This is your mayor and city council. I don't know. Are you okay with that? I'm just curious, because I'm not. I'm not okay with it. I hope you're not. I think it's time for, I would love for our city to have a leader, to have a mayor who actually, I don't know, cares, who actually pays attention to what goes on in our city. Wouldn't that be refreshing to once again have a mayor who really gets involved and who wants to lead our city well, instead of an empty suit like Keith Short, whose State of the City address was written for him by Mark Kippett? Wouldn't it be nice? Well, guess what? We have an opportunity, and I received a press release from Valerie Bodart, who is running for mayor of McLennan Chisholm. I pray that citizens, you will wake up, that you will talk to your neighbors and say, look, Valerie Bodart attends city council meetings. She's well informed. She knows what's going on, and she's a really nice person. Wouldn't it be nice to have, I don't know, instead of a political leftist, big government leftist, to have someone who is a conservative, who believes in limited government, who loves our open spaces as Valerie does? I hope so. I hope and pray that you'll get out and vote, and that you will vote for Valerie Bodart. I don't know who's running against the illegitimately appointed Nathan Hodges or Jim Bloom yet. I haven't got any word on those, but whoever they are, I'm quite sure that they'll have my support. Although I will say, Jim Bloom has he's grown on me. And it's not because he's an Aggie. It's because he believes, and he has actually been the only member of the council to stand up to developers who wanted to put in high density development. I mean, to me, his actions is what I judge him on. I think his economic development stuff is crap, but what he's doing in protecting our wide open spaces, he's got my confidence. I'm more okay with him than I was this time last year. So anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you soon, because don't forget, if you haven't subscribed, please do so, and hit the notification bell so that you know that when I'm having a show. So until we talk to you next time I'll be highlighting the county commissioner race. We will see you.